Here in the Cascade Range of the Pacific Northwest, many of the mountains are sleeping volcanoes. When one finally blew, it produced one of the biggest volcanic eruptions in living memory. In 1980, Mount St. Helens had been dormant for over 120 years. So when swarms of earthquakes shook the mountain and a small crater formed at its summit, scientists from the US Geological Survey noticed straight away. Richard Waite was one of them.
There is a certain fatalism amongst geologists that work around these volcanoes. As we all know that if you're going to work around one that's getting ready to erupt, there's some risk.
Richard's colleague, David Johnston, was also on the mountain.
David Johnston was up on this ridge, just a quarter mile from where we are now, and he was monitoring Mount St. Helens in an official capacity.
David had parked his trailer in front of the volcano's north flank to keep an eye on an ominous bulge. That same day, amateur photographer Keith Ronholm made his way to a scenic spot also overlooking the volcano's north flank.
We're at Bear Meadow, where I was 28 years ago in 1980. I was 10 miles from the mountain. It seemed like a perfectly safe place to be.
But just after 8:30 that morning, the last of a series of earthquakes hit, triggering one of the largest landslides in recorded history.
I glanced over at the mountain, and the entire north face was in motion, was sliding down. And it's such an unbelievable view that I like shook my head and I said, Am I really seeing this? So I dove for my camera and stood there and started taking pictures. And the very first picture shows the entire side of the mountain blowing out. It was quiet. There was no sound. So there was no big explosion noise or anything that would make you want to run.
The landslide had released highly pressurized volcanic gases. But instead of shooting upward, they blew out sideways. The blast roared across the landscape at nearly 500 kilometers per hour and hit geologist David Johnston's trailer. "12 kilometers away, Keith Ronholm was still taking these pictures.
In one of the pictures you can see projectiles being ejected out with like trails behind them, and those are like house-sized objects. You could see it coming towards me, and then it hit the most distant ridge out there and began to break over it like a wave breaks over a breakwater and curl over and churn. You just want to watch it, but on the other hand, it's getting closer, and so there's this conflict of, do I stay and watch or do I go?
Keith Ronholm was lucky. The blast tore past to the west of him